Statistics Review number 5. First, we review vocabulary. The margin of error is something that is a multiple of a standard error. So a standard error is the standard deviation of a statistic. Confidence interval is an interval corresponding to a level of confidence that captures a parameter. And finally, a p-value is a probability, assuming the null hypothesis is true, of getting a statistic that extreme or more. True-false statements, how can we make them false or falsify them? Number 5, be careful, we never accept, we fail to reject. The hypotheses are always about parameters, not statistics. Tests of significance have similar assumptions to confidence intervals, usually having to do with randomness and whether we can use the normal curve because of large counts or the central limit theorem. A sample result more than 2 standard deviations from what the null hypothesis should be is usually evidence against the null hypothesis. This is a manifestation of the 68, 95, 99.7 rule. It's 2 standard deviations. A company currently uses brand A light bulbs, which have a mean life of 1,000 hours. Salesperson marketing brand B, a new brand of bulb, contacts the company. The company will switch to the new brand of bulb only if there's convincing evidence that the mean life of brand B is greater than 1,000 hours. Write a null and alternative hypothesis that can be used for a test of significance for this setting. Well, the null is the established norm, what has been going on, and that's that the mean has been 1,000 hours. The alternative would then be if the mean is greater than 1,000, and I know to use greater than because in the context of the story, we're talking about brand B is going to last more or greater than 1,000 hours. Number 10, banks often use a machine to count and package pennies in rolls of 50 pennies. Occasionally, a machine malfunctions and begins putting fewer than 50 pennies in each roll. The quality control inspector at a certain bank wants to investigate whether its machine is functioning properly, but does not want to break open the rolls to count pennies. The inspector will measure the weight of a roll of pennies to test the following hypotheses. The machine is putting 50 pennies in each roll. What is the likely alternative hypothesis to this scenario? Well, I think you can agree with me that the machine is broken if it's putting more or less than 50 pennies in each roll. It's designed to put 50, that's what it should be. So my alternative is going to be the machine is not putting 50 pennies in each roll. Number 12. A hospital administrator made the claim that 20 years ago the rate of secondary infections was 12% for surgeries, but today the rate is significantly lower. The governing board wants to test that claim and commissioned a study to investigate. A random sample of surgeries was analyzed, and it was found that 9% had secondary infections. A test of the appropriate hypotheses resulted in a p-value of 0.039. Assuming the conditions for inference were met, is there sufficient evidence that the significance level of alpha is 0.05? What can we conclude? Since this number, 0.039, is less than this number, 0.05, since the p is low, we must reject the null. What would have been the null hypothesis? That would be the established number. The established number was 12%. That means that the alternative would have been the rate of secondary infections is less than 12%. That's what the administrator was saying. Is significantly less than 12%. And there our use of the word significantly is justified. Number 12. Based on a random sample of 50 students, the 90% confidence interval for the mean amount of money students spend on lunch at a certain high school is found to be between $3.45 and $4.15. Interpret the confidence interval. We are 90% confident that the true amount high school students spent at lunch is in this interval, the true mean amount. 13. Based on a survey of a random sample of 450 likely voters, 75% want the government to use its influence to lower gas prices. If the margin of error is 3%, what is the confidence interval? 5 minus 3, that would be the lower end, and 75 plus 3, that would be the higher end. Confidence interval, there would be, and since it's a percentage, I'm going to convert this to a decimal, 0.72 until 0.78. 14. A telephone survey found that of 200 who responded, 180 liked the ending of Avengers Endgame. What is the point estimate for the proportion of all people who like the ending of Endgame? Well, that would be exactly the fraction we get from the sample. That's what a point estimate is. It's always an estimate from the sample. 15. In a statewide campaign for governor, the new candidate was favored by 54% of likely voters over the incumbent. However, the new candidate made several unfortunate remarks 1 week before the election. A new poll was conducted and found that 317 out of 600, or 50.3%, favored the new candidate. Was there a significant decrease in support for the new candidate? His advisors proposed two hypotheses. The null was that it was 0.54, and the alternative was that it was less than 0.54. Based on this information, answer the following questions. A. What is the point estimate p hat? The point estimate comes from the sample, and the sample is saying that the proportion who favor the candidate, I'm going to put this as a decimal, 0.503. What is the standard error? So the standard error has to use the null value because we don't have reason to reject the null at this point. So we have to use 0.54, and then we'll also use 0.46, and then we're going to use the sample size, which was 600. And this answer is 0.02. What is the z-score of the statistic? The point estimate, 0.503, 0.503, minus the hypothesized, 0.54, over the standard error that we just calculated of 0.02. And it's negative 1.85. It's negative because it's less than the mean. What is the p-value implied by this statistic? We go to our z-chart for negative 1.85, and the answer there is 0.0322. E. What is your conclusion? Reject or fail to reject? Well, since this p-value, 0.0322, is smaller than our established alpha of 5%, 0.05, p is low, we reject the null. We reject the null. We have convincing evidence support for the candidate is less than 0.54. That's it. End of the year. Last review. Have a great life.